Hi everyone, it's Niamh here and welcome to my art journaling channel. Today we're going to be doing an art journal layout and we'll be making our own collage tissue. So I'm starting off making my collage tissue for this page and I'm just using some of the Tim Holtz blank tissue paper. You can use any tissue paper to do this. It's stuff that you get in the supermarket or deli paper. Anything that will become translucent when it gets wet with adhesive. Some deli paper or freezer papers have a little bit of silicone in it, so they won't work. But anything that's usually got a matte surface will absorb the paint or the adhesive, so it will go more translucent. So I'm just stamping that up with a permanent ink. You want to use a permanent ink so it doesn't run or smudge, because obviously you're going to be getting it wet with glue later on. I use the squid ink from Jane Davenport, but archival ink, anything that's permanent will be great. And I just set it aside to dry just to make sure it was really dry before I used it. So this is a page I've had pre-prepared in my journal. It's been sitting there for about a year and I've never used it. So it's a page that I just put some texture paste through. I was playing with my texture paste one day to see if it would go on the burlap on the opposite page. And it's just through a honeycomb stencil, and then I painted over the top of it with some yellowy paints. I think it was cheddar and another yellow colour I had in my stash, and then it just sat there. So today I'm going back in and decided to warm up the page, and I'm starting with some reds just to add that sort of warmth back into the page. And I'm using the Dina Wakley Ruby paint, and I really watered it down. I wanted something really translucent to go over the top, just to warm up those yellows and oranges colours underneath. Next I'm going in with some of the Sedona paint, which is a warm sort of browny red colour. And for this one I'm not going to water it down as much because I want that more opaque look going over the top. So you can see it's a little bit thicker as it goes on. And again I'm going to sort of rub some of it off so you can get that honeycomb pattern coming up from behind, but you can see the warmth sort of collecting around the texture paste. If you're using texture paste on a page, you want to make it the focus, or you want to at least see that texture coming through. So by sort of scrubbing it back, you can see that coming back. To give it a bit of a focus, what I'm doing is going around the edge with some burnt umber, just to sort of make almost a vignette type look. That's going on straight, but it is a sort of watery brush, just to again bring that warmth back and give it sort of that grungy look to the page that I'm looking for. So now what I'm doing is cutting up my collage tissue. The reason I'm using collage tissue on this page is because I've got that texture paste in the background. If I tried to stamp that bee directly onto the page, obviously because it's got the texture there, it's not going to go into all the nooks and crannies. By being on the tissue paper, I can sort of mold it around the texture paste so it will sit, but you've still got the full image that you're looking for. It's a really, really handy technique to put stamped images on a page when you've got texture in the background or collage, or you sort of want it to sit in the background. So I've saved me doing the fussy cutting of all my bees. I cut them out really, really close to the image, and you can see here, I do apologise, it went out of focus for some reason. It will come back into focus in a few seconds. I do cut, when I cut my collage images out, very close to the edge. That's just me personally. I don't like having that halo effect around it. Some people don't mind that. I will give you a bit of a tip later on how to get rid of that and blend it into the background a little bit more. I'm just applying the tissue with some matte medium or collage medium onto the background. I'm just using my fingers to put it on, and I'm putting a generous amount on the base where my image is going to be. Then I'm rubbing over the top gently with some more just to seal it in and again get that translucence happening. If you just sort of glue one side, some of the image will stay white, and that frustrates me. It may not bother you at all. You may like that effect, and that's great, but it frustrates me. So I try and get it, personally I try and get it as translucent as possible, and sometimes it takes a little bit of work and a little bit of rubbing the adhesive in, and you can see me rubbing a few of the legs off because I'm rubbing it so much. If that happens, just go back in with a black pen and draw it in again. It didn't really bother me all that much. I'm using a matte gel medium to glue these down. The reason for that is if you use a gloss, it works just as well, but you can see where I've got some of that excess glue around the outside. By having the matte, it's not going to affect it. The paint that I'm using is matte, so it blends in. You can't actually tell I've glued it down because it all dries clear in the end. And you can see I'm wiping off a little bit of the excess there. If you use gloss, you sometimes get that gloss ring around it. A good way to combat that is when you finish the entire thing, you can always do a thin coat of gloss over the entire surface, and again it blends in and you don't know what you've done. So you can see with some of my bees, I cut them in half and have them sort of going off the page. That's sort of to ground my images somewhat, so it looks like it's a snapshot in time rather than just carefully place things on a page. It just helps the piece of art flow off the page. And now all I'm doing is going in to colour the bees. I've got some gold acrylic ink, I think it's from Amsterdam, that I'm just going in with a fine brush, and I've watered it down somewhat because again I don't want straight gold on here. I want it to be sort of translucent so you can see the colours from the background. This is just going to give the image of the bees a little bit of sparkle. I will go in as well to the wings and add some sparkle to those using I think it's called a Winker Stella brush pen, which I'm trying to find at the moment. It's like liquid glitter. It's amazing stuff, and it's really, really sparkly. I was actually really surprised when I went to use it the other day on a Christmas card. It really gave a snowy effect. I was sort of expecting just a little bit, but it looks stunning, particularly when you tip it up into the light. It really catches your eye. So once I'd finished colouring the bees' wings, I decided I wanted a quote on this page. So I'm just making another quote using my collage tissue, and this is a stamp from Stampers Anonymous. I'm just tearing around the edge because I find I like that look better than the cut edge when I'm gluing down collage papers. And the quote says, what you once were and who you are now is where the dance of life really begins. And I thought that was perfect with the bees and sort of dancing around the page. Now you can see here when I was rubbing it down I was a little bit too vigorous and I actually tore the piece of paper. So all I'm going to do is with my collage paper stamp it out again and trim out the little piece that I need and remove the bit that I destroyed. I was going to use a rude word there. And then I'm just re-gluing it down again. So you've got the full quote there. Now you can see in this quote it's a little bit cloudy because there's a little bit of extra paint here. So all I'm going to do is with a little bit of the Sedona, which I've used in the background, go back over it. And because it's so translucent, it sort of just blends that quote back into the background. And that's a really handy thing to know when you're doing these collage images. You can sort of see, particularly here, where you've got that edge of the cut edge of the bees where you couldn't get in too close, and how I can blend in the quote on the other side by using a little bit of paint. So this is the final piece. I hope you really enjoyed watching how this went together. I really enjoyed doing this, and just using collage tissue is just such a really useful thing to have in your arsenal of techniques for art journaling. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye.